something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was, just that it ran across the yard.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was. Whatever it is, it's running. I couldn't catch it if I was going to chase it. So whatever it was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
See up!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Oh, and the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's a big... real big person. That's all I can say.
Okay, but it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person, somebody really big.
It's been the subject of campfire stories for decades. A camera-elusive, grooming challenged bipedal ape man that roams the mountain regions of North America. Some call it Sasquatch. Others know it as Bigfoot. Thousands of people claim to have seen the hairy hominoid, but the evidence of its existence is fuzzy. There are few clear photographs of the oversized beast. No bones have ever been found, and countless pranksters have admitted to faking footprints. Yet, a small but vociferous number of scientists remain undeterred. Risking ridicule from other academics, they propose that there's enough forensic evidence to warrant something that has never been done: a comprehensive scientific study to determine if the legendary primate actually exists. There have been thousands of sightings, and Sasquatch stories go back centuries. Tales of mythical giant apes lurk in the oral traditions of most Native American tribes, as well as in Europe and Asia. The Himalaya has its abominable snowman, or the Yeti. In Australia, Bigfoot is known as the Yowie. Bigfoot advocates hypothesize that the primate is the offspring of an ape from Asia that wandered to North America during the Ice Age. They believe there are at least 2,000 ape men walking upright in North America's woods today. An adult male is said to be at least 8 feet tall, weighing around 800 pounds, and have feet twice the size of humans. The creatures are described as shy and nocturnal, and their diets consist mostly of berries and fruits. Matt Moneymaker had been searching for Bigfoot for years in the woods of eastern Ohio. He claims he finally came eye to eye with the elusive primate. Quote, "It was 2 o'clock in the morning. The moon was a quarter full. Suddenly there he was, an 8-foot-tall creature, standing 15 feet away, growling at me. He wanted to let me know I was in the wrong place." End quote. Moneymaker, who lives in Dana Point in Southern California, is a lawyer who runs his own marketing agency. In his spare time, he leads the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or the BFRO, a network of more than 3,000 people who claim to have seen the Sasquatch. Unfortunately, no one has been able to snap a clear picture of the beast. Perhaps the most compelling photographic evidence of Bigfoot is a controversial short film shot by Roger Patterson in 1967, which appears to document a female Bigfoot striding along a riverbank in Northern California. Now, Bigfoot advocates are increasingly turning to forensic evidence to prove the existence of the giant creature. Investigator Jimmy Chilcutt of the Conroe Police Department in Texas, who specializes in finger and footprints, has analyzed more than 150 casts of Bigfoot prints that Meldrum, the Idaho State professor, keeps in a laboratory. Chilcutt says one footprint found in '87 in Walla Walla in Washington State has convinced him that Bigfoot is real. The ridge flow pattern and the texture was completely different from anything I've ever seen. He said it certainly wasn't human, and of known primate, that he's ever examined. The print ridges flowed lengthwise along the foot, unlike human prints which flow across. The texture of the ridges was about twice the thickness of a human, which indicated that this animal has a real thick skin. Meldrum, meanwhile, says a 400-pound block of plaster known as the Skookum cast provides further evidence of Bigfoot's existence. The cast was made in September of 2000 from an impression of a large animal that had apparently lain down on its side to retrieve some fruit next to a mud hole in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in Washington State. Meldrum says the cast contains recognizable impressions of a forearm, a thigh, buttocks, an Achilles tendon, and heel. It is 40 to 50% bigger than a normal human. The anatomy doesn't jive with any other known animal. A few academics believe Meldrum could be right. Renowned chimpanzee researcher Jane Goodall last year surprised an interviewer from National Public Radio when she said she was sure that large, undiscovered primates, such as the Yeti or Sasquatch, exist.
In human footprints, the ridges run horizontally across the width of the foot. On primates, the ridges run diagonally. On this casting, the ridges run vertically down the side of the foot. The ridges on this cast are about twice the thickness of a human print. Now, these casts were cast 20 years apart and hundreds of miles apart, yet they have the same ridge texture and ridge flow pattern.
Now, occasionally, Sasquatch tracks do show this same sort of a pressure ridge. And here's my attempt to reconstruct and contrast the skeletal anatomy of the human on the right and the Sasquatch foot on the left, illustrating this flat, flexible morphology, such that when the heel comes off the ground, as I've said, the weight's now borne over the forefoot, and that weight then, if the substrate is compliant and of appropriate consistency and the appropriate speed and so forth, if conditions are such, it will sometimes push up a pressure ridge into the hind part of the foot. The human foot, as we've said, doesn't ever do that. It will leave a little elevated area that indicates the negative space beneath the arch. But if there is a pressure ridge or a displacement disc, it will always be behind either the ball of the foot or the toe row itself. Now, as has been mentioned, in October 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin are purported to have captured on film a bipedal ape, commonly referred to as Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And not only does it show the individual, as has been mentioned, but also the footprints, but we can actually see the kinematics of the foot as it relates to the features of the footprints themselves. Patterson and Gimlin cast two tracks, two footprints, a right and a left. And unfortunately, as is a common mistake made by amateur researchers, is that they look for the flattest, clearest, crispest prints they could select, which gives you a good indication of the, a mold, effectively, of the foot, but it tells you very little about the dynamics of the foot fall and stance itself. And when the so-called experts examined these, they said, boy, these look awfully flat. They look like they could be carved pieces of wood. Well, fortunately, two circumstances converged to rectify that situation. One was Lyle Laverty, as has been mentioned, within a couple of days, was on the scene and snapped off some pictures of some of those tracks. This one, you can see there's a lot of perturbation, a lot of material that's been pushed back into the posterior part of the track. You can see the edge of that pressure disc quite distinctively there towards the back of that footprint indicated there. Here's a slightly different perspective of that same track on the left. You can see the arrows indicating that displaced pressure disc. Here's one on the right that shows a less perturbed pressure ridge in the appropriate place for the mid-tarsal joint. The most stunning footprint, however, photograph is this one, which shows very clearly a pressure ridge. And the second set of circumstances was that several weeks later, Bob Titmus, this taxidermist who had been involved with some of these events in Bluff Creek very early on, went to the site and took it with him enough plaster that he was able to cast 10 footprints in succession, irregardless of their quality. And this was very informative because it showed some of the variation from footprint to footprint in this track. Here's just a few examples of those. The one that was the most telling, though, he happened to cast that very track that Lyle Laverty had photographed, as seen here on the right. From this vantage point, you can't appreciate it quite as well, but there's a copy of this cast outside in the hallway that you can look at more closely. But the pressure ridge is very evident in this footprint. And as I said, we can go back to the film itself and look at these enlarged frames from the Patterson film and see the actual kinematic of this mid-tarsal break or mid-foot flexibility. Now here, if you look, you can see, although the film is a little bit overexposed, and so the lighter sole of the foot sometimes is hard to distinguish from the similar hue of the sand. But the point is, notice that foot, and you can see the heel coming off. Clearly there's a flexibility there in the midfoot. You can also see the very pronounced heel that is indicated. This correlates very nicely as well, because if you increase body mass and want to increase the leverage, but without incorporating the anterior part of the foot into the power arm of the lever system, the alternate is to increase the hindfoot length.
The vast majority of scientists still believe Bigfoot is little more than a supermarket tabloid fodder. They wonder why no Bigfoot has ever been captured, dead or alive. The bottom line is, they don't have a body, says a writer for Skeptical Inquirer magazine who has followed Bigfoot debate for 20 years. Bigfoot buffs note that it's rare to find a carcass of a grizzly bear in the wild. While that's true, grizzlies have not escaped photographic documentation. Hair samples that have been recovered from alleged Bigfoot encounters have turned out to be from elk, bears, or cows. Many of the sightings and footprints, meanwhile, have proved to be hoaxes. After Bigfoot tracker Ray Wallace died, his children finally announced that their prank-loving dad had created the modern myth of Bigfoot when he used a pair of carved wooden feet to create a track of giant footprints in a Northern California logging camp in 1958. And on another note, he also retracted that statement. Depends on what you want to believe, I guess. The writer for the magazine says he's not surprised by the flood of Bigfoot sightings. He says it's the same kind of eyewitness reports that you see for the Loch Ness Monster, UFOs, or ghosts. You name it. He also said that the monster thing is a universal product of the human mind. We hear such stories from around the world. With like anything that sparks debate or controversy, you will have those that are for and those that are against, the believers, the skeptics, people who are not sure what they believe or who to believe. What I know is this: there lies the possibility of these wondrous creatures to exist here on this planet. I know hundreds of people that swear God exists, although they have never seen him, at least, not clearly. Once again, viewer, it's up to you to decide.